unrest in one of the West Africa's largest economies. Now, for this discussion, we are welcoming Desmond Majekodunmi. He's a political and environment activist, joins us live from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining me again. Good to see you. Now, how is this news taken in Africa? Is this President Ouattara's bid for a fourth term and disqualification of key opposition figures? Is this seen as legitimate or popular, and how does it affect the legitimacy of the upcoming election in Ivory Coast?
Yes, it's a most unfortunate activity that's going on. We've seen it happen over and over again in different countries when the leadership gets too entrenched in the position of power and also have control over the machineries of power. They tend to want to just keep on prolonging their leadership, and it impacts very negatively because you get too many tight corners where just a few people are controlling all the reins and all the economy. It doesn't bode well for that particular country at all, and it could degenerate into something rather terrible for the place. One just hopes that other African nations will intervene and try to ameliorate what could be a really terrible problem for Ivory Coast. One really, really hopes that he does not manipulate the whole democracy. In a lot of these countries, we don't even call it democracy. We call it a demonstration of crazy. Democracy, because it has very little to do with the people whose power.
Wow, that's a new word for my dictionary. Thank you, Desmond, for sharing that word. And Desmond, as you mentioned, that other African leaders could be a help to Ivory Coast. Is there any other African nation in particular that can intervene and make sure the democratic election does take place?
Yes, that's a good question. It's quite delicate because you can't sort of go in there and invade the country, but one could hopefully put enough pressure on the people who are surrounding the leadership. And quite frankly, a country like Nigeria that has been able to transit from military rule to civilian rule a couple of times, but it's been in a civilian democracy for quite a while, and also been able to transit from one ruling party to the opposition party coming into leadership. And Nigeria does have quite a strong voice in the African Union, especially the West African Union. So hopefully she'll be able to exert enough pressure and let sensible people in Ivory Coast realize that this is not the way to go. The man is elderly. He deserves to be able to retire and enjoy his old age instead of, it looks like, forcing his way in, because the kind of bans that we're seeing on demonstrations and arrests of people and so on, it's not the best at all. So one is hopeful that countries like Nigeria will be able to exert the necessary pressure to avoid what could be a very volatile situation.
And Desmond, lastly, is there any other international organization or any other country across the world that can play in ensuring a fair electoral process in Ivory Coast?
Yes, again, it's a delicate situation because you are talking with a sovereign nation. And whilst the United Nations, does have some influence, and of course, United States of America has considerable influence, it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. And one just really, really, really hopes that the people themselves can be persuaded, the people in the Ivory Coast can be persuaded to be brave, to be strong, and in some cases, it might be quite sacrificial to just stand firm. And if they do, once you have enough numbers on your side, and another way, of course, is to use the media, like your media. The electronic media is a very powerful tool now. It's getting more and more powerful. You know, here we are communicating thousands of kilometers across the world as if we're face-to-face. And media is a very, very effective way of getting this message across to the people of the Ivory Coast that, you know, stand firm, stand strong, and it's not too late yet.
Yes, that's the message we give. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on. Anwar Gargash, the diplomatic advisor to the UAE's president, has called for an immediate ceasefire in Sudan during the Reuters Next Gulf Summit in Abu Dhabi. Gargash has emphasized that Sudan's future must be centered on a civilian-led transition rather than a military junta. He has criticized the current inability of the UAE to provide humanitarian support in Sudan, contrasting this with its active role in Gaza. However, Gargash has expressed the UAE's willingness to scale up aid once permitted. Sudan has been embroiled in conflict between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces since April 2023, triggering a severe humanitarian crisis. The RSF is currently pushing for control of Al-Fashir, the army's last stronghold in Darfur, with the goal of establishing a rival government. Tensions between Sudan and the UAE have risen, with the Sudanese army accusing the UAE of supporting the RSF with advanced weapons and mercenaries, a claim the UAE has denied.
Are calling for an immediate ceasefire. We are calling for scaling humanitarian support. And most importantly, we don't see the future of Sudan in a military junta. We see the future in Sudan in a civilian transition. On the humanitarian side, we're working on the margins because we are not allowed to go in, and conditions also in Sudan itself is not allowing us to play the role that we are playing in Gaza. It's interesting that an Israeli government is allowed